When my daughter-in-law Vanessa Carter showed up at my place, she did not even bother knocking politely. "We heard you bought this beautiful cabin in Colorado," she said in a loud, confident voice. "We are moving in so we can leave all the old grudges behind." Then she shoved 2 big suitcases through my front door like she already owned the place. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I just stepped aside and let them come in. But the moment they walked into the big living room and saw what was waiting there, all the color drained right out of their faces. My name is Harold Bennett. I am 58 years old, and I live in a mountain cabin outside Aspen, Colorado. For 25 years, I built my life from absolutely nothing. After I got discharged from the United States Marine Corps, I started working as a welder in a small metal shop in Denver. Over time, I worked my way up until I owned my own company, Bennett Metal Works, with 30 employees. 2 years ago, I sold the entire operation for $2,100,000. Not bad for a kid who grew up in Kansas, joined the Marines right after high school, and later served 2 tours in Iraq. Those first years after I came home from the war were rough. I still remember standing in that little welding shop on East Colfax Avenue. Sparks were flying everywhere around me while I worked, and I was trying my best to forget some of the things I had seen overseas. The work helped more than anything else. There is something honest about melting metal and joining 2 pieces together to make something stronger than they were before. At the beginning, I was just another grunt holding a torch, but I paid attention to everything around me. I watched how the business worked. I learned how the accounting books were handled. I noticed which customers paid their bills on time and which ones would stall for months before writing a check. After 5 years of saving every spare dollar, I finally had enough money to rent my own workspace. Then eventually, I rented an entire shop. After that, I started hiring men to work for me. I taught them the same welding skills that had kept my hands busy and my mind steady all those years. By the time my son Logan Bennett was born, my company already had 8 employees and more work than we could handle. Logan came into the world when I was 26 years old. His mother, Melissa, died in a car accident when Logan was only 4 years old. A drunk driver ran a red light on Interstate 25. After that, it was just me and the boy. I used to bring him to the shop every afternoon after school. I set up a little workbench for him where he could practice welding on scrap metal while I handled the real projects. By the time he was 12 years old, he could lay down a cleaner weld bead than some of the apprentices I was training. Those were good years. While we worked, Logan asked me questions nonstop. "Dad, why does this joint break right here? What makes this kind of steel different from that one?" He had natural talent for the work. But even more important, he had patience. Working with metal teaches you patience. If you rush, you ruin the job. If you slow down and take your time, you build something that will last for decades. After Logan graduated from high school, he worked beside me for 8 years. I planned for him to take over the business one day. He understood quality. He understood what it meant to put your family name on a piece of work. We handled the hardest projects together. Structural repairs on old buildings. Custom fabrication jobs for oil drilling rigs up north. I was proud of him. Then he met Vanessa Carter. Vanessa was 26 years old when Logan first brought her to meet me. She worked as a loan officer at First National Bank downtown. She was pretty, dressed sharp, and talked confidently about financial planning and investment strategies. At first, I figured that kind of business knowledge might actually help Logan. The changes started slowly. Logan stopped showing up for our regular Friday night poker games with the crew from the shop. He said Vanessa preferred doing more cultural activities, things like art galleries and wine tastings. At the time, I figured there was nothing wrong with trying new things. Maybe she would help him grow a little. But before long, Logan started questioning almost everything we did at the shop. "Dad, Vanessa says we are charging too little for our services." "Dad, Vanessa thinks we should focus more on large commercial contracts instead of all these small repair jobs." It was always the same phrase. "Vanessa says this. Vanessa thinks that." Their wedding turned into a huge event at an expensive hotel in Cherry Creek. The whole thing probably cost more money than I had ever spent on anything in my life except the down payment on my shop. Since Logan's mother was gone, he asked me to walk him down the aisle. When I handed him over to Vanessa, she leaned closer to me and whispered quietly, "Do not worry, Harold. I will take good care of him." Looking back now, I should have paid more attention to the way she said it. After their honeymoon, everything started changing faster. Logan began showing up late to the shop and leaving early. Whenever I tried to talk to him about a welding technique or a job we were working on, he would stare off into space. "I do not know, Dad," he would say. "Maybe we should hire more experienced guys to deal with the complicated projects." This was the same kid who had figured out how to repair a cracked engine block when he was 19 years old. The real breaking point came about a year after the wedding. One day I discovered that Logan had been secretly meeting with business brokers. He was asking them to estimate how much my company was worth, and he had never said a word to me about it. When I confronted him, he could not even look me in the eyes. "Dad, Vanessa just thinks we should explore our options," he said. "Our options for what?" I asked. "For selling the company," he said quietly. "Maybe moving into something more stable, something that is less physical." I stared at him. It felt like I was talking to a stranger wearing my son's face. "Logan," I told him, "this business is your inheritance. Your grandfather worked metal in Wichita. Your great-grandfather forged horseshoes in the Oklahoma Territory. This trade is part of who we are." He shook his head. "That is old-fashioned thinking, Dad. Vanessa says we need to be more strategic about building wealth." Vanessa says. It was always Vanessa says. 6 months later, Logan gave me his official notice that he was quitting the company. He told me he had accepted a job with the city as a heavy equipment technician. Good benefits. Regular hours. No pressure from running a business. I tried to talk him out of it, but his mind was already made up. "I will still come help sometimes on weekends," he promised. But he never did. I kept the business running for another year after that, but the heart had gone out of it. Without Logan there to eventually take over, I just felt like an old man working himself to the bone for no real reason. So when one of my competitors offered to buy the company, I accepted. $2,100,000 for 25 years of work seemed fair enough. With that money, I bought the cabin where I live now. It is a 3,400 square foot place built from timber and stone, sitting high above the roaring Fork Valley. The price was $1,800,000. The real estate agent called it my dream retirement home. Personally, I thought of it more as a quiet place where I could sit with my thoughts and figure out where things went wrong between me and my son. That was 2 years ago. During all that time, Logan called maybe once a month. Our conversations felt awkward and careful, like two strangers making polite small talk. He would ask how I was doing. I would ask about his job. Neither of us ever mentioned the welding shop or everything we had lost. But about 6 months ago, I accidentally learned the truth about what I had really lost. That Tuesday evening, I called Logan's phone. I just wanted to hear his voice. Maybe invite him up to the cabin for a weekend of fishing. The phone rang twice and went to voicemail. I was about to hang up when the phone suddenly connected again. He must have accidentally dialed my number from his pocket. I could hear both of their voices clearly. "That old man is sitting on more than $2 million, Vanessa said. Her voice sounded sharp and calculating, like she was discussing livestock prices at an auction. "When is he finally going to die and stop being such a burden?" My hand tightened around the phone. I waited for Logan to defend me. I waited for him to say something that sounded like the boy I had raised. Instead, he said, "Soon, hopefully. He is not getting any younger." And with that heart issue he had last year. The heart issue. I had experienced a small heart rhythm problem that sent me to the hospital for 2 days while the doctors ran tests. It turned out to be nothing serious. At least that was what I believed. "We need to be smart about this," Vanessa continued. "I have been researching things. In Colorado, if someone is declared mentally incompetent, their family can legally take control of their finances. It is supposed to be for their protection." "You think he would agree to something like that?" Logan asked. "He will not have a choice if we handle it correctly," she replied calmly. "I know people at the bank. People who understand how these situations work. All we need is to establish a pattern. Confusion, poor decisions, maybe some suspicious financial activity." I ended the call and sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours, staring out at the mountains. I had spent 25 years building a life so I could pass something meaningful down to my son. And there he was in Denver with his wife, quietly planning what to do with my money after I was gone. That was the moment I started paying very close attention. 3 months ago, I got a phone call from Dr. Andrew Collins, my cardiologist at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital. Andrew and I actually served together in Iraq. Back then, he was a combat medic who once saved my life after an improvised explosive device destroyed our convoy outside Fallujah. Now he is one of the best heart doctors in Denver. "Harold," he said over the phone, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. How has your mental health been lately? Any confusion? Memory problems? Andrew, I said, what kind of question is that? There was a long moment of silence on the other end of the line. There was another long pause on the phone. Finally, Dr. Andrew Collins spoke again. Someone called my office last week, he said slowly. A woman who introduced herself as your daughter-in-law. She sounded very worried about you. My stomach tightened. What exactly did she ask you? I said. She asked detailed questions about dementia and heart patients, he replied. She also wanted to know the legal process for declaring someone mentally incompetent because of medical problems. Hearing that made my blood run cold. What did you tell her? Nothing, Andrew said right away. Patient confidentiality. I did not give her any information. Then his voice grew more serious. But Harold, people usually do not ask those kinds of questions unless they are planning something. I figured you deserved a warning. I appreciate that, I said quietly. If you need anything, he continued, documentation about your mental health, another medical opinion, whatever it may be, you call me. After I hung up the phone, I sat there for a long time thinking. Then I started making some phone calls of my own. First, I called an old lawyer friend of mine from the American Legion. After that, I contacted a private investigator I had heard about through a veterans network. If Vanessa planned to question my mental capacity, then I needed to understand exactly how that game was played. That was when I first learned about something called guardianship fraud. I learned about predators who target older people with money, especially those who live alone or do not have close family around. I discovered how legal systems can sometimes be twisted in ways that strip a person of control over their own life. In some cases, someone can lose their freedom, their property, and even the right to manage their own finances. All it takes is convincing a court that the person is mentally incapable. Once that happens, someone else can legally control everything. The investigator I hired was named Dana Brooks. She had spent 20 years working as a special agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation before starting her own investigation business. Dana was tough as steel and had sharp eyes that seemed to notice every small detail. When I told her about the phone call I overheard between Logan and Vanessa, she nodded like it was something she had heard many times before. Your daughter-in-law is not being subtle, Dana said. What does that mean? I asked. It means she is either very foolish or very desperate, Dana replied. My guess is desperate. Why desperate? Because people who try to take money from elderly relatives usually have serious financial problems themselves. She leaned back in her chair. Let me dig into her background, she said. I will see what I can find. A few days later, she called me with the results. What she discovered made me feel physically sick. Vanessa had gambling debts totaling $85,000. Those debts were spread across 3 casinos in Black Hawk and Central City. She had also been borrowing money on several credit cards, taking cash advances, and even securing a loan from a private lender in Denver with an 18% interest rate. But that was only the beginning. Their house in Thornton was already in foreclosure. According to Dana, they had only 45 days left before the bank would evict them. But the worst part came later. Dana asked me to meet her at a small diner in Wheat Ridge. We sat in a booth drinking coffee while she explained the rest. She has done something like this before, Dana said. My chest tightened. What do you mean? 3 years ago in Grand Junction, she continued. There was an 80-year-old widower named Franklin Hayes. Vanessa had been working at a bank there at the time. According to Dana's research, she convinced the old man to withdraw $50,000 for a so-called investment opportunity. The investment never existed. What happened to the man? I asked. He died of a heart attack 2 weeks later, Dana said. The coroner ruled it natural causes, but the timing raised a few eyebrows. It got worse. Apparently, Vanessa had been added to the man's updated will shortly before he died. She received $25,000. The man's family was grieving and never pushed for a deeper investigation. I slowly pushed my coffee cup away. My hands were shaking. There is more, Dana said. She told me Vanessa had been contacting psychiatrists all over the Denver area. Each time she asked the same kind of hypothetical questions. Questions about elderly people with dementia. Questions about confusion, poor decision-making, and legal incompetence. She is trying to build a paper trail, Dana explained. If she can convince the right people that you are mentally unstable, she could attempt to control your finances. How many doctors? I asked. So far I have identified 4, she replied. Every time she used the same story. A worried daughter-in-law concerned about an elderly relative showing signs of confusion and bad judgment. By that point, the situation had become painfully clear. Vanessa had not married my son simply because she loved him. She married him because he gave her access to me, access to my money. And once her gambling debts got out of control, she decided to go after everything. That brings us to last Tuesday afternoon. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see 2 people standing outside. They had enough luggage with them to stay for weeks. I was not surprised. Dana had already warned me they were running out of time before losing their house. They only had about 30 days left before eviction. I opened the door and smiled. "Dad," Vanessa said brightly. She walked right past me before I could even speak. 2 enormous suitcases scraped loudly across my hardwood floors as she dragged them inside. "We heard you bought this beautiful cabin in Colorado," she said cheerfully. "So we decided to move in and leave all the old problems behind us." Her eyes were already scanning the living room. I could almost see the numbers running through her head while she estimated the value of every piece of furniture and every painting on the wall. Behind her stood my son Logan. He carried 3 more bags. But he refused to look me in the eye. This was the same kid who used to run toward me every evening when I came home from work, wrapping his arms around me for a hug. Now he stared at the floor like a stranger. "Vanessa," I said calmly. "Logan, what a surprise." "Is it not wonderful?" she said, spreading her arms wide like she was greeting her own kingdom. "The family is together again." She turned toward Logan. "I told him we need to fix things. Family is everything." "Family is everything," I repeated quietly. The words tasted bitter. What they did not know was that I had been expecting this visit for weeks. When Dana called to tell me their car had left Denver that morning, I finished my preparations. The moment I heard their vehicle pull into my driveway, I pressed the record button on my phone. Colorado law allows a person to record conversations if at least one participant agrees. Since the conversation was happening inside my own home, I was completely within my rights. "Of course," I said politely. "Let me help you get settled." The next few days taught me a lot. Vanessa wasted no time making herself comfortable. She immediately started trying to change things inside my house. "These dark leather chairs are so heavy," she told me while running her fingers across the furniture I had carefully chosen when I moved in. "We should lighten up the space with brighter colors." Each piece in that room meant something to me. Every chair, every table reminded me of the life I had built with my own hands. "I know an excellent interior designer in Denver," she continued. "She could completely transform this place. Make it more modern." Transform. That word stuck in my mind. It was probably the same word she used when she convinced Franklin Hayes to transform his investment portfolio. "I will think about it," I said. Then I went to the kitchen to make coffee while she continued examining the house. While she was evaluating my property, I was quietly conducting my own evaluation. On the second day, I left a stack of financial documents on the kitchen table. They clearly showed the balance of my investment accounts. $2,100,000. Then I went into my office and watched through the security camera I had installed earlier. Vanessa found those papers within 20 minutes. She looked around carefully to make sure nobody was watching. Then she pulled out her phone. Click, click, click. She photographed every single page, every account number, every balance. The security camera recorded everything. That evening I told them I planned to go out for a drive. "I need some mountain air," I said. "Might be gone a few hours." "Take your time, Dad," Vanessa replied with that same practiced smile. "We will take care of everything here." Instead of driving through the mountains, I headed straight toward Denver. I had a meeting scheduled with Victor Langley. Victor's law office occupied half a floor inside a tall building downtown. He specialized in elder law and had a strong reputation for protecting older clients from financial predators. "Mr. Bennett," he said while shaking my hand across his large wooden desk. "You said this was urgent." I told him the whole story. The phone call I overheard. Dr. Collins warning me about Vanessa contacting psychiatrists. Her past involvement with Franklin Hayes. The gambling debts. The foreclosure timeline. Victor listened carefully without interrupting. He only stopped occasionally to write notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Colorado law offers strong protections for vulnerable adults," he said. "However, guardianship cases can become complicated, especially when family members are involved. They would need medical proof that I cannot manage my own affairs," I said. Exactly, he replied. And right now that evidence does not exist. That is correct. That gives you an advantage, Victor said. But we need to be proactive. He recommended that I undergo a full mental evaluation, an independent clinic, a board-certified specialist in elderly medicine, complete cognitive testing. When they make their move, Victor said, we want undeniable proof that you are mentally sound. What else should I do? I asked. Continue documenting everything, he replied. Those recordings are legal and extremely useful. Then he picked up his phone. I also want to involve another expert, he said. A forensic accountant who specializes in financial abuse cases involving elderly victims. Her name was Maya Richardson. She used to work as an investigator for the Internal Revenue Service before opening her own consulting practice. Her office was located in Lakewood. The place looked simple and practical, more like a normal accountant's workspace than anything dramatic. But Maya had the sharp, focused eyes of someone who had spent decades following complicated money trails. After 1 week of investigating Vanessa's finances, she gave me her report. Your daughter-in-law's situation is worse than desperate, Maya told me. Maya Richardson slid several sheets of paper across her desk toward me. The gambling debt we can clearly prove adds up to $85,000, she said. But that is probably not the full amount. The papers showed bank statements, credit reports, and loan documents. She owes money to 3 casinos, Maya continued, tapping the pages with her finger, and at least 2 private lenders I was able to identify. She pointed to another document. Their house goes to foreclosure auction in 28 days. I leaned forward, studying the paperwork. Maya kept explaining. She has been bouncing checks between accounts, she said, taking cash advances on one credit card just to make the minimum payment on another. She shook her head. It is the classic financial downward spiral. How long can someone keep something like that going? I asked. Not very long, she replied. Which explains why she suddenly decided to go after you. Maya folded her hands on the desk. She needs a large amount of money quickly. Otherwise, she is looking at bankruptcy and possibly criminal charges for writing fraudulent checks. Then she leaned back in her chair. But there is something else I found that is even more interesting. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Do you remember that man in Grand Junction you mentioned earlier? She asked. The widower Vanessa targeted? Yes, I said quietly. Well, she did not just convince him to invest money, Maya continued. She also talked him into naming her as a beneficiary on his life insurance policy. How much? $50,000. I exhaled slowly. Good Lord. Maya nodded. It gets worse. She opened another folder. I have also been tracking her movements over the past 6 months. Where has she been going? 3 separate trips to Colorado Springs, Maya said. She visited the Veterans Affairs Hospital there twice. I frowned. What was she doing there? She spent hours sitting in the parking lot, Maya replied, approaching elderly veterans after their appointments, talking with them in the lot. A cold feeling spread through my chest. She is hunting, I said quietly. That is exactly what she is doing, Maya answered. And you are not the first person she targeted after that man in Grand Junction. She looked directly at me. You are simply the biggest target she has found. A few weeks later, the official paperwork arrived. It came on a Thursday morning by certified mail. The envelope carried the seal of the Pitkin County District Court. Inside was a formal legal petition. It had been filed by my son Logan Bennett and his wife Vanessa Bennett. They were asking the court to grant emergency guardianship over me. According to the document, I was supposedly an incapacitated family member. I sat down at my kitchen table and read every word carefully. The petition claimed that I was suffering from serious cognitive decline. It accused me of acting irrationally, showing paranoid thinking, and being unable to manage my finances or personal life. They asked the court to appoint Logan as my legal guardian. If approved, he would gain complete authority over my medical decisions, where I lived, and every dollar I owned. Effective immediately. Attached to the petition was something even worse. A document that claimed to be my updated will. According to that will, everything I owned would go directly to Logan. Vanessa was listed as the executor of the estate. The signature looked convincing, but I knew immediately it was fake. I had never signed that document. Vanessa had clearly practiced forging my handwriting. I picked up the phone and called Victor Langley. They filed it, I said. Victor sounded calm. Good, he replied. Now we can respond properly. He explained that he had already hired the state's leading forensic handwriting specialist. Her name was Dr. Elaine Porter. She will examine the document, Victor said, and I guarantee she will prove that signature is forged. What about the guardianship petition itself? I asked. That is where your medical evaluation comes in, he answered. The day before, I had completed a full cognitive assessment at University Hospital with Dr. Karen Whitfield. Victor spoke again. Do you want to hear the results? Tell me straight, I said. He read from the official report. According to Dr. Whitfield's evaluation, your cognitive test results place you in the 98th percentile for men your age. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning ability is sharp, and there are absolutely no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any other cognitive disorder. For the first time in months, I smiled. Will she testify in court? I asked. Victor laughed quietly. She is more than willing to. Apparently, she is tired of seeing capable elderly people targeted by guardianship fraud. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. The case would be heard by Judge Margaret Sullivan, a former prosecutor known for being tough and direct. Over the weekend, Dana Brooks uncovered one more piece of information. She called me late Sunday evening. I have been monitoring Vanessa's communications, she said, and she has been speaking with someone in Las Vegas. Her sister, Monica Carter. What are they talking about? Escape plans, Dana replied. They are discussing what to do if things fall apart in Colorado. You think she might run? Absolutely, Dana said. But that is not the most interesting part. She explained that she had also investigated Monica. Monica worked at a nursing home in Henderson, Nevada. Over the past year, 3 elderly residents at that facility had their bank accounts slowly drained. Small withdrawals at first, then larger ones. Every transaction authorized by someone holding power of attorney. I shook my head. This is not just Vanessa, is it? No, Dana said. It looks like a family operation. They have probably been running this scheme in different states for years. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. The courthouse in downtown Aspen was already busy when I walked in with Victor and the rest of our legal team. Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table with a public defender. Apparently, she could no longer afford a private attorney. She wore conservative clothes, trying to look like a concerned daughter-in-law. But I could see the desperation behind her eyes. Logan sat behind her. He looked miserable, like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. Judge Sullivan entered the courtroom and began reviewing the documents with the calm focus of someone who had spent decades handling cases. We are here regarding the matter of Bennett versus Bennett, she said. I have reviewed the petition requesting emergency guardianship. Vanessa's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my clients are simply concerned for Mr. Bennett's well-being. Recent behavior suggests cognitive decline, and they believe intervention is necessary to protect his financial interests and health. Judge Sullivan looked unimpressed. I see. She turned to Victor. Mr. Langley, I understand you oppose this petition. Victor stood. Yes, Your Honor. Not only do we oppose the request for guardianship, we believe it is part of a deliberate plan to defraud my client through fabricated medical claims and forged legal documents. He began presenting the evidence step by step. Dr. Porter's handwriting analysis proving the will had been forged. Dr. Whitfield's medical evaluation proving my mind was completely sound. Maya Richardson's financial investigation revealing Vanessa's gambling debts and pattern of targeting elderly victims. But the most powerful evidence was the audio recordings. When the judge heard Vanessa's voice saying, "When is he going to die and stop being such a burden?" The entire courtroom fell silent. Finally, it was my turn to testify. I walked up to the witness stand, raised my right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Then I told the whole story, not just about the plan to steal my money. I talked about my son, about my business, about losing the trust one once had in my own family. The prosecutor asked me one final question. Mr. Bennett, what outcome would you like to see from this case? I looked directly at Vanessa. For a brief second, her confident expression cracked, and I saw fear in her eyes. I want other older people to understand they do not have to become victims, I said. We worked hard for what we have. We built it through years of sacrifice. And we are not going to hand it over to predators who think we are easy targets. Judge Sullivan delivered her decision quickly. The petition for guardianship is denied. Then she continued. Furthermore, this matter will be referred to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Mrs. Bennett, you are charged with forgery, fraud, and attempted exploitation of an at-risk adult. Vanessa was arrested later that same afternoon. Ironically, the police picked her up at a casino in Black Hawk. She had been trying to win enough money to leave the state. 3 months later, she accepted a plea agreement to avoid federal charges. She received 18 months in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to both me and the family of the man she scammed in Grand Junction. The night after her sentencing, Logan came to see me. He stood on my porch looking completely broken. Without Vanessa's influence, he seemed lost. "Dad," he said quietly, "I do not know how to apologize for what I did." "You can start by rebuilding your life," I told him. "Get honest with yourself. Find work that means something. Then come back and see me in a year." He looked surprised. "A year? 1 year," I said. "Show me you have changed." He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. It has been 8 months since that conversation. Logan calls me every Sunday. He works at a machine shop in Lakewood now. He tells me about the mistakes he is making and the things he is learning. He has not asked me for money once. Last week, I received an anonymous cashier's check for $500. It was made out to the Harold Bennett Veterans Foundation. I started that foundation using part of the money from my legal settlement. It helps young veterans learn skilled trades, just like metalworking helped me rebuild my life after Iraq. This morning, I am sitting on my back deck with a cup of coffee. The sun is rising over the mountains, painting the sky with gold. A hawk circles slowly overhead. Patient, quiet, watching. My phone buzzes with a text message from my neighbor Carl Dawson. "Fishing this afternoon?" I smile and type back. "Sounds perfect." Sometimes you have to fight to protect what belongs to you. But after the fight is finished, you remember what truly matters. Justice feels good, but rebuilding something that was broken feels even better. And if you ever face something like this yourself, remember one thing. Do not let anyone tell you that you are too old to stand up and fight. We did not build our lives by giving up, and we are not about to start now.